MyBookie.ag brings you Klatt. Use promo code NEXTROUND for a deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly in your MyBookie account. MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Only with MyBookie.ag. Code NEXTROUND. Klatt's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Klatt, I laughed. I mean, as the Baylor TCU game is ending, I'm like, this would have been Klatt's game, and it's an absolute classic.
It would have been like our first good noon game of the year. I'm like, of course we didn't go to that one.
And I started thinking, if the victory bell is a dud, Klatt just cannot catch a break. But you did, because that was a phenomenal game. And you and Gus, you know we love you, but you and Gus, y'all did such a good job presenting that game Saturday night. Such a fun game to watch.
Appreciate that. Yeah, that was a great one. And what I loved about it, obviously there were mistakes and everything made, but I don't think it was necessarily, even though it ended on a pick, it wasn't necessarily defined by mistakes as much as it was plays made. And that's always, what I love about big games like that. And I got to tell you, like, there was some Caleb Williams is just really impressive. I know he's got another year, but he's got a Mahomes-esque quality about him when he breaks contain. He's such a threat throwing the ball on the run, but the thing is like, it's not just the mobile guy that you're like, well, if we keep him hemmed in, we got a good chance, because he's really good in rhythm too. It's all the way around. His performance was outstanding.
I thought they handled the loss of Travis Dye well too, and not the same team, and it may hurt them later on, but in that one game, adjusting that quick, I thought they did a great job.
I thought so too, and big credit to their offensive line, and that's a group that we haven't given a ton of credit to. And I was making this point during the broadcast, but they've got a transfer that has rotated at left tackle a little bit, but the other 4 and really 5 guys on that offensive line, they were holdovers. And, when you talk with Lincoln and the staff around the program about the culture change and what it took, like what was last January like and December like, they talk about those guys on the offensive line and how they not only welcomed the transfers in, but then decided to say, like, hey, listen, we've got to up our game, because this can't all be about the new guys. And like a Justin Dedich, for example, the right guard, they talked about how important he is to that team and the culture within the locker room. And then that offensive line kind of proved that out on Saturday night. Now, listen, UCLA is not good defensively, so I don't want to be like, wow, like unbelievable. But when you lose Travis Dye and then you can protect the passer like they did, run the ball with Austin Jones like they did, I think that's a big credit to them and what they were able to accomplish.
With Tennessee out of the mix of the conversation, it does feel like now USC, if they are able to beat a surging Notre Dame team, and if Oregon wins out a highly ranked competitive Oregon team, it does feel like they you can't say control their own destiny, but it does seem like a clear path to the playoffs for the Pac-12 champion.
No, I would say controls. I know you feel differently, but that's probably because you think like, hey, South Carolina.
No. I feel like the Ohio State, Michigan. I think it's going to. I really do. If TCU wins out, I feel like it'll come down to a debate about one loss USC and one loss Michigan or Ohio State.
Which in that respect, I think it would go to the conference champ, because I think that they would be similar, and they would go to the conference champ. And you said it about Notre Dame, this resurgent Notre Dame team. If they're able to win this week, I think people are going to pretty clearly put them in the mold of a playoff team. So I actually believe at this moment that the loser of Ohio State, Michigan needs some help, and USC and TCU both control their own path. I think TCU, that's pretty clear. But even USC, I would say USC wins out. I would be shocked if USC did not make the playoff if they were to win their next 2 games.
Joel Klatt is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, presented by MyBookie.ag. Code NEXTROUND. A deposit of $50 or more, you could get up to $200 in cash instantly with your MyBookie.ag account. MyBookie.ag, code NEXTROUND. And I know you're passionate about this, so I want to give you a second here. For the health of the college football playoff moving forward, How critical do you feel it is for USC to close this deal and get some West Coast representation in this thing for a change?
I don't know if it matters this year. I think what we're all waiting for now is like this is the last 2 years in an 8-year term for a president, you know, where it's just like we're just running it out. And I think we're all looking towards the 12-team playoff, and I don't know if it matters as much as it did in the previous 8 years, to answer your question. So for example, let's play this out. What's a better scenario for USC? Let's just look at it just from USC's perspective, West Coast. Is it better for them to win out, get snubbed, play for a Big Ten East team? Okay, let's say it's the loser of Michigan, Ohio State. They get snubbed for that team, then play Penn State in the Rose Bowl and win. 13-1, Rose Bowl champs, Pac-12 champs, snubbed. Okay. Is it easier to recruit to that or win the next 2 games, get in, get trounced by Georgia? It's a question. It's a question.
Yeah.
Now,
I know which one I would enjoy the most.
Well, of course, yeah. No, I get it. And listen, that's probably unfair to USC to just suspect that they would get trounced. But you've got this element of a team that's reliant on one player, and we've seen complete teams like Georgia and what they do to teams like that, right? So I want to bring up a few teams that are like that I would have. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, it's like, was it a great thing for them to actually make the playoff and lose the way that they did? Florida State, was it great for them to get in and get the benefit of the doubt in 14? I'm not sure. Washington, Michigan State, even some of these Notre Dame teams, right? It's Oklahoma. Their last playoff berth was in this mold, and then they haven't been the same since. So there's this element of like, well, yeah, you want to go, but you don't want to get embarrassed. You know, there's only one team that went to a playoff, got embarrassed that I can think of, and please, if you guys have another, and then recovered after that, and that would be Ohio State. Remember, got embarrassed by Clemson, and then in a couple of years, they were able to get back. Now they had won one, then they got embarrassed, and then they were able to get back, and then they lost to Clemson, then they beat Clemson. So they've had kind of a run through the playoff. So I would just pose that. I know you said for the long-term health of the sport, but I honestly believe that the long-term health of the sport is resting in the future expansion, how that looks and how that's going to play out.
Yeah. And isn't it ironic that one of the big roadblocks is still the Rose Bowl, who wants to have that exclusive 4 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Central to 2 p.m. Pacific time exclusive window on January 1st. They're still one of the biggest roadblocks.
So I think I can say this.
Oh, I love it when you think you could say. Go ahead. Nobody watches this anyway. I mean, it's basically just
they do. Come on, you guys are huge. You guys are huge. The issue with the Rose Bowl is that the tournament of roses is the one at the table, not the Rose Bowl folks.
Interesting.
That operate the stadium and the game.
So it's basically the parade people are making the decision.
And the pageant people.
Yeah, the pageant people. Yeah.
And the way that entity operates is similar to like how these bowl committees operate in that there's hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and they generally volunteer for years and years. And then if you do it for long enough, and play the game the right way, you will eventually be president for 1 year, right? Are you familiar with this type of model?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
parades, things like this, right? And so think about it. So you've got people that have waited 20, 25 years for their moment. Their whole life, has in some ways been dedicated towards this parade, towards the Rose Bowl, maybe game itself, but more so parade, the local community. And then they get their chance to be the president. And then now they're the ones sitting at the table. Do you think they have any incentive whatsoever to change the status quo? Of course not.
No, because their buddies are lined up waiting to be president, and they got to go to the country club with them. Yeah.
because they will be remembered throughout the history of their little circle of people as the one that, let it go, if you will, and changed course. So that's a major issue. I think that there's people within college football that are smart enough to know that game, in a conversation in which people are worried about the traditions of the game and the changing nature of the game, and I think that there's some sentiment that they can hold on to tradition by awarding the Rose Bowl some sort of fixed place within the playoff. That's a foundational kind of cornerstone place. Maybe it's a semi, maybe it's a quarter. I don't know, but it would be kind of a destination, not just for the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, but for everybody in college football. And you could put it on that date and on that time every single year. And that's not happening. And I hope cooler heads will prevail, because yes, this is a huge sticking point, and it's generally on the Rose Bowl side, and they've got to fix that. But it's not the Rose Bowl necessarily; it's more the Tournament of Roses, and they need to be educated in what this could be moving forward.
Yeah, I won't bore you, but I'll email you my playoff plan. It includes it includes playing the quarterfinals on January 1st. We got to get over football being a one semester sport.
I disagree. I disagree.
It's not the first thing we've disagreed on.
Semis should be on the first. Semis should be on the first.
Joel Klatt.
Because the more that we push, remember, the more that we compete with the NFL. Like there's that, like, I don't think we necessarily need that either. Also, the more that we push, the more that we compete with the decision for players to declare for the NFL. So I respectfully completely disagree. Like, I think that we need to start like making sure that we're condensing as much as we possibly can because of those two factors. And the other thing that I would say is you play the semis on New Year's always. I think the Rose Bowl should always be the first semi on New Year's. That would be my plan. That would be the cornerstone foundational piece. Rose Bowl always be a semifinal. Then you go play the championship, not on these stupid Monday nights, but on like at least 6 days later on a Saturday night, like the next available Saturday night. This is what college football is. It owns Saturdays, and then all of a sudden we play on Monday night as if we're like college basketball. It's the dumbest thing that we do.
Joel Klatt is with us on Fox. He's presented by MyBookie.ag, code next round. MyBookie.ag, code next round. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. You'll see him 11 o'clock, Fox 6, before the Iron Bowl kicks on CBS. He'll have the big game, Ohio State and Michigan. I watch Ohio State again Saturday playing an inferior team. It is a road game. You know how we feel about conference road games on this show.
Yeah, atmospheres are insane.
Listen, Maryland had a good atmosphere. I'm not going to lie. 40% of the crowd was Ohio State fans, but it was a good atmosphere. This team, Klatt, feels like they're missing something. Beyond the obvious injuries, it just feels like there's something. And I could probably say that about every team in America. I'm not picking on Ohio State. I could say it about Georgia. I watched them struggle against Kentucky at times. It feels like Ohio State, though, is missing something. I can't put my finger on it.
Okay, so there were a couple of things that pop in my mind here that I'd love to go on. I'm just jotting them down so I don't forget, because I got hit in the head a lot at one point in my life. All right, let's go with the team. Seems like they might be missing something. I don't think that that's specific to Ohio State. You brought it up in your question just a little bit. I think that we might be holding everybody around the country to a higher standard than we need to this year because of the 4 champions that we've just had. We're in a stretch right now where we've seen some historically great teams win the national championship. Going back to, like, we saw Trevor Lawrence, a generational talent as a true freshman, right? I mean, like that Clemson team in 18 was very good. You guys know that. 19, you got Burrow throwing for 60 touchdowns. Like, that team was unbelievable, 15-0. Then the COVID Alabama team won every major offensive award, and it was almost a better offense than what we had just seen with Burrow. Then last year, we've got 6 draft picks on one defense, and a historically great team. I don't think we have a team this year that would have won a national championship in any of the previous 4 seasons. Okay? I think that that's fair to say.
That's fair.
I think that you guys would agree. And yet we kind of view them in that mold. It's like, well, can they really win the national championship? Well, maybe this year, because remember, national championships are not awarded historically. They're rewarded on a curve. All you got to do is beat teams this year. So is Ohio State, while we might think missing something, good enough to beat any team that they play this year? Sure. Is Georgia? Absolutely. So, and that's all that it takes. So that's number one. Then number two would be, I think that Georgia saw this, Tennessee absolutely saw this, Ole Miss saw this, North Carolina saw this, TCU saw this, Michigan saw this, Ohio State saw this. It becomes increasingly difficult to play at your best the longer that you are required to be at your best. Okay, so conference schedules are tough the longer that they go. That's why you see late in November teams get knocked off, because everybody's struggling with health. Now all of a sudden your margin of talent is somewhat equated to your opponent, and then teams lose. You see a lot of teams that are big favorites not cover late in November. And that's because when you're out there and you're banged up, all of a sudden you're going to be in a really tight game, and then you got pressure. You got 18 to 22-year-olds. They're not playing their best. A lot of things go on, which is why I've always been so critical of those ridiculous opponents that some play in November. And again, I know that this is the wrong show to have this take on.
No. That was going to be my next question.
UAB and Austin P is not good for the sport.
We all hate it. We hate it.
Yeah. And see,
of course you do.
That's common ground that you and I have, and Brown agrees with us that it should be SEC only games in November. You take care of all this stuff early. Now, the schedules equal out because when Alabama's on the road at Texas, somebody else may be playing their version of Austin P or UAB or whatever.
Correct.
But
that's why it's not a conversation of the opponent.
Right.
It's when it happens.
Exactly.
Right. If you just switch that level of game, the Texas game, with Austin P and just switch them in the schedule, it becomes increasingly difficult for that Texas matchup. You would agree with that?
Yes.
And that's why and then there's another aspect, and I don't think people talk about this as much. Remember, this is still a subjective sport now. It's a 4-team invitational. And Alabama was missing some key pieces, and so they don't cover. I think they failed to cover by 11, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that,
by 45.
Yeah.
All right, something along those lines. So they win 34-0. Nobody says a peep. Nobody. If that happens in September and they only beat Austin P 34-0,
oh yeah,
the sky is falling.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep, 100%.
Meanwhile, you've got Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Georgia, Tennessee, all these other teams, again, across conferences, that are similarly banged up, guys having to miss time. And then when they don't play to their best as it relates to the margin with which they're supposed to win over a conference opponent, which is just more difficult inherently, now we view them more unfavorably. So both teams played similarly poor. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And yet in a subjective sport, all the focus is just like, man, Michigan's no good. Look what it took to beat Illinois. Well, aren't they doing the exact same thing when Bama doesn't beat Austin P by the spread or something along those lines? So that's the next layer of this, is that in this subjective sport, then the analysis goes all towards the teams that have the more difficult task. And if they're not dominating, we look upon them less favorably. And then this team gets to rest, win by 34 when they should be winning by 45 or 50, and nobody says anything about it.
I would say that when we go to 9 games in the SEC, that hopefully this is the weekend that we lose that extra game, that this becomes an all SEC November. That's what I'm hoping for down the stretch.
I'm glad you said that, because I said it on the broadcast on Saturday night, and people just all over me. And again, this is not a knock at the SEC. It's just for the health of the sport. And I think that you guys agree with that, because I've said it on your show, the SEC is the best conference, period, right? It's the toughest conference to win. There's never been a 2-loss team go to the playoff. If LSU beats Georgia, they're going to go to the playoff. Why? Because they're the SEC champion, period. I've said it time and time and time again. Now, I don't think that the middle of the conference is as close to the top end of the conference this year as, let's say, the middle of the Pac-12 is to the top of the Pac-12. But that has more to do with where is the top end of the conference. So these conversations round and round and round. I do not hate the SEC. They are the best conference in America. Their winner is going to and should go. Georgia is going to go to the playoff. period, regardless of what happens. But nobody, whether it's Florida State over ULM or UAB and LSU or Austin P and Alabama, those games and matchups on November 19th are not good for college football.
All right, he is Joel Klatt. You'll see him Fox 6 Saturday morning. Big noon kick is Michigan, Ohio State. So tune in for that. Klatt, enjoy that game. We'll see you next week.
Man, second time ever that these teams will meet at least 11-0.
Wow.
I mean, I cannot wait. I cannot wait. It's going to be a fabulous game.
Yeah. Hey, good. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family too, man. I hope you all enjoy
Same.
it.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys.
All right,
Safe
buddy.
travels.
Take care. Klatt with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. He's presented each week by MyBookie.ag. Use the promo code NEXTROUND on a deposit of $50 or more, and you can receive up to $200 in cash instantly in your MyBookie account. Hammer this bonus, MyBookie.ag. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie.ag. Use code NEXTROUND for your chance at that free cash for MyBookie.ag.